Tipping the scales at 500 pounds and beyond, they push the edges of the human envelope. Their massive bodies have been re-engineered by generations of selective genetics, from their hearts and lungs to their bones and stomachs. To reverse the body's own survival mechanism to put on and retain weight, science is learning to modify blood chemistry, manipulate hormones, and even re-engineer the human digestive system. Now, an exploration of inner space as we investigate the science of obesity. Francis Serrano is a 28-year-old Filipino-American. This marketing coordinator living in Orange County, California, leads a rich and fulfilling life. He volunteers at his church and serves as a father figure to his 5 nephews and nieces. But he knows that his massive size puts it all at risk. Francis is in a stratospheric weight class, at the heaviest end of a group of some 9 million Americans who are termed morbidly obese. Francis weighs in at more than 500 pounds and wears size 70 pants. At his height of 5 feet 8 inches, that's 3 times his ideal weight. BMI is the ratio of height to weight. For most people, a healthy BMI ranges from 18 to 25. Any number over 30 is considered obese, and over 40 is morbidly obese. Francis is off the charts at a whopping 76. Francis and others like him are super heavyweights who seem to defy the normal limits of physical size. From off the charts to merely tipping the scales, obesity creates many different shapes in those affected. It changes more than just appearance. It re-engineers everything, from the internal organs, to the way the body moves, to the way it digests food. There are many causes of obesity, from overeating to rare hormonal conditions. For some people, obesity is life-threatening. It overtaxes the heart, lungs, and many other organs, and is linked to some 300,000 deaths in this country each year. For Francis Serrano, obesity feels like a ticking time bomb.
When I was a young boy, people always said that, you know what, by the time you're 20, you're gonna have a heart attack and you could be dead. Well, I'm 28 now, so what I'm afraid of is now I'm on borrowed time.
Francis fears how hard his heart has to pump to oxygenate his massive body. The walls of his heart chambers are thicker because of his weight, and his heart can't contract and expand as it needs to. It's both oversized and overworked, a potentially deadly combination.
And that's who I am. I am morbidly obese, where it is almost a certain that I will die because of my weight problem.
Then warm up a little bit, forward circulum.
To try to get fit, Francis regularly practices eskrima, a form of Philippine martial arts. Yet even a moderate amount of exercise leaves him completely winded.
Too much for me, Joe.
Normally, lungs inflate as the diaphragm muscle beneath them contracts. This lowers the pressure in the chest, forcing the lungs to take in air to equalize the pressure. Inside the lungs, small sacs called alveoli take carbon dioxide waste out of the bloodstream and replace it with freshly inhaled oxygen. In obese people, fat deposits in the wall of the chest push against the lungs and diaphragm, crimping their ability to expand and take in more air. Researchers have found that even mild obesity affects lung function, and as the body mass index goes up, total lung capacity goes down.
It's very frustrating because I want to do more. I want to do so much more. But my body is the one telling me, you know, you gotta slow it down, you gotta slow it down. But I'm running out of time.
Reduced lung function makes it more difficult to fully oxygenate the body after exercise. It takes Francis nearly 3 times as long as his sparring partner to recover. The excess weight carried by Francis and every other overweight human being is actually a natural accumulation of essential fatty acids, chemicals needed by the body to produce energy. The body converts fatty foods into triglycerides, a thick form of oil known as a lipid. Triglycerides are then absorbed into the bloodstream during digestion. Distributed throughout the body, the average human has between 25 and 275 billion fat cells. Fat cells are unique in design. Their walls stretch, and they have very little other structure. They're like rubber balloons that expand as they absorb more lipids and store energy. It's not necessarily the number of fat cells that makes someone fat. Someone with more fat cells could be skinnier than someone with fewer. By the end of puberty, an adult has amassed all the fat cells he or she will ever have. As people gain weight, fat cells don't increase in number. Instead, they just get bigger to absorb more fat.
Oh my gosh.
As Dr. Ramoyne, director of the Medical Genetics Institute at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, points out, your body is like a machine and needs power to run it.
If you take fuel in, if you take food, you can either burn it or you can store it. And the storage is sort of like a battery. You can run your battery out, but you have to have a place to store that energy. And the fat cells are where you store that energy. You take carbohydrate, you can take protein, and if you don't need it for fuel, you turn it into fat.
Francis Serrano stores so much fat that he has little energy. His organs won't be able to support his massive frame much longer. His choices are stark: an extreme diet regime combined with vigorous and steady exercise, or surgery. Francis is considering a radical and risky option known as gastric bypass. His search leads him to bariatric surgeon Dr. Mark Paya.
Gastric bypass is the most common operation performed in U.S. for weight loss.
A bariatric specialist at the West Hills Hospital and Medical Center in Southern California, Dr. Paya has performed hundreds of gastric bypass procedures. By re-engineering his digestive tract, Francis hopes he can shed the pounds that threaten his life.
It has a consistent weight loss. In the first year, statistically, patients lose approximately 70 to 80% of their excess body weight.
The normal stomach is a muscular, pear-shaped sac about a foot long and 6 inches wide. It holds about 3 pints of food at a time. Francis's stomach is now double that size. In a Roux-en-Y gastric bypass procedure, surgeons first create a new and much smaller stomach. Then they carve a detour in the intestinal tract that bypasses the old stomach and large parts of the intestine. This forces the body to take in less food and absorb fewer nutrients.
Basically, what they're going to do is make my stomach the size of a shot glass, and then reconnect my intestines to the new portion of my smaller stomach.
Francis is opting for gastric bypass out of sheer desperation. As a morbidly obese person, Francis's heart, lungs, and most of the rest of his body are overburdened to dangerous, possibly deadly levels. It's risky. It results in about 1 death in 100 patients due to complications. But Francis has a lot to live for, and he's willing to roll the dice. If successful, the surgery could deliver benefits beyond just a trimmer body. It could impact him in many ways, including how he walks. The stride of an average man is perfectly parallel. An efficient double pendulum motion with pivot points at the hip and knee direct all energy forward. Arms swing freely, balancing each step. In obese people like Francis, large accumulations of fat around the legs, arms, and torso cause each step to be directed outward, lowering the efficiency of the stride. Arms are forced to swing around the protruding torso. An obese person walking the same distance at the same speed as an average person can expend as much as 11% more energy. Though their muscles are generally larger to support the extra weight, they lack strength and tone due to lack of exercise. it's a myth that heavy people are big boned. Sometimes the skeleton thickens slightly, making the bone denser, but not much larger. Muscles are forced to do the heavy lifting, and Francis must use much more energy for tasks like walking, which should be relatively easy for someone his age. How is it that so many people tip the scales to obesity? It's a simple formula. Consume more calories than you burn, and you will gain weight. When you consume 3,500 calories, equivalent to about 14 hamburgers, and you don't burn it off, you'll gain a pound.
Hi, how are you? Good, good. How are you doing?
Very good.
Contrary to popular belief, eating enormous amounts of food isn't the only way to become obese. Small increases in calorie intake can lead to large gains in weight over time. A 40-year-old obese man who carries 100 extra pounds of body fat has only consumed, on average, 25 more calories per day over his whole life than he has burned. This is the equivalent of eating an apple every 3 days. Like so many people, dieting and exercise has never worked for Francis. Whatever weight he is able to lose through diet and exercise comes right back on as soon as he resumes his routine. For many, this is the most frustrating thing about trying to lose weight. But it may not be their fault. One theory suggests that every body has a natural and fixed set point for weight, determined at the time of sexual maturity. The set point only changes if the person makes dramatic and permanent adjustments in diet and exercise. An extreme diet may initially bring on weight loss, but will also cause the body to release hormones that increase appetite and lower metabolism. The body does this to try to stave off starvation. If this theory is correct, hormones will try to restore the body to its equilibrium or set point weight. This may explain why dieters often fail to lose the pounds. Simply eating less doesn't address the body's desire to return to its natural set point. In Francis's case, if this theory is right, his set point weight is dialed way above average. He's studied the possible benefits and risks. And now, in a desperate bid to revamp his body's plumbing, Francis plans to go under the knife. Francis Serrano is an extraordinarily large human being. At a little more than 500 pounds, he is 3 times the ideal weight for someone his age and height.
My God.
This makes it hard to do just about everything, even driving. Everyday objects like cars are not designed for him, and he's always having to adjust his frame to a world built for bodies less than half his size.
It's harder in a sense where I have to always get a seatbelt extension or some sort of, safety restraint extension. So in a friend's car or something like that, and most 9 out of 10 they won't, or 10 out of 10 they won't have a seatbelt extension for me. So I'm always volunteering to drive just so that I can, drive safely.
In fact, when Francis gets into a car, his weight so overburdens the engine that he can reduce the car's fuel efficiency by 10%. Despite his size, Francis is not even close to the recorded weight record. Manuel Uribe of Mexico, for one, weighs almost twice as much as Francis. Due to a lifetime of overeating, the 40-year-old Uribe maxed out at 1,200 pounds before undertaking an ambitious diet. A handful of others have reached the 1,000-pound mark. But they are rare individuals who are generally unable to walk or even get out of bed. Most die at a young age from ailments like heart or kidney failure. The problem is widespread. Among Americans 20 years of age and older, 65% are either overweight or obese. And the obesity problem is getting worse. The average weight of American men and women increased by more than 24 pounds between the early 1960s and 2002, though they only increased in height by 1 inch. The fear of an early death has led Francis to make a choice. In order to lose a staggering 300 pounds, Francis has decided to undergo an extreme re-engineering of his digestive system. The typical digestive tract is an assembly line. Food is combined with powerful enzymes and acidic fluids to break it down into usable nutrition that the body can absorb through the intestinal walls. Francis hopes the surgery will limit the amount of food he ingests, since a smaller stomach will fill up more quickly. If the surgery is successful, it can lead to rapid and sustained weight loss. Gastric bypass surgery re-engineers the size of the stomach, from the equivalent of an American football that holds 3 pints of food to a small pocket able to hold only an ounce. The rest of the stomach is left intact, but is no longer a part of the digestive tract. In the bypass portion of the surgery, the small intestine, normally 15 to 20 feet long, is cut anywhere from 2.5 to 5 feet downstream of the stomach. It is then brought up and attached to the smaller stomach pouch.
If you are 100 pounds, just 100 pounds over your ideal body weight, that means you're carrying 10 bowling balls every day, up the stairs and down the stairs. Francis is approximately 300 pounds over his ideal body weight. So that's 30 bowling balls he's carrying every day. Francis came to me after I performed an operation on his mom's best friend, which was the same gastric bypass, and she did great. She lost more than 100 pounds.
But before the surgery, a team of medical professionals must evaluate the bariatric patient, both physically and psychologically.
Things that we look for in the evaluation are whether or not patients really understand what they're getting themselves into when they make such a major life decision. Are they really knowledgeable about the procedure? Are they fully informed about the risks or the possible complications of the surgery? And are they ready to take personal responsibility for dramatic lifestyle changes that are required? We like to see what we saw with Francis, somebody who's thought about it, who's prepared, and who is ready to make the commitment.
Up to now, I think I've done a pretty good job of living and not letting my weight be a factor, but now I think I'm starting to realize that it's becoming more and more a factor, and I got to do something about it.
With the small intestine now about 1/3 shorter, the surgery keeps it from absorbing all the nutrition that passes through it.
Hi, how are you, Mr. Serrano?
I am still beautiful.
Good, good. Go ahead and sign in.
Thank you.
Francis must first take a cardiac exam to make sure his heart is strong enough for the operation.
Hello.
Hi.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I am good.
Good. My name is Maria. I'm going to be doing an echocardiogram on you
Nice to
today.
meet you.
If Francis's heart is not fit, he runs the risk of a heart attack while he's anesthetized. The heart is comprised of 4 chambers. Its job is to pump oxygen-poor blood to the lungs and oxygen-rich blood from the lungs to the rest of the body.
Okay?
Yep.
All right.
Extreme obesity, as in Francis's case, enlarges the heart due to overwork, since it has to pump an increased blood volume to supply a larger body. The average 190-pound man has about 12 pints of blood in his veins, while a man Francis's size needs about 30 pints or more.
Tickles.
An enlarged heart is an inefficient heart. Obesity often leads to a thickening of the heart walls as the muscle stiffens. It's harder to fully contract, and it can't squeeze all of the blood out of the chamber. During stress, such as exercise, the constricted heart can't keep up with the body's demand for blood.
Okay. We're all set.
Thanks.
If they decide his heart is not up to it, they could pull the plug on his surgery.
Okay, Francis. I look at your echocardiogram, and I can tell you that, the results are fine.
That's load off my mind.
You'll do fine. I'll talk to you later.
Thanks, Doc.
Fortunately for Francis, he's not yet experienced any serious health effects from his obesity, and he hopes his surgery will eventually reverse the few problems he does have, including sleep problems, joint pain, and poor lung performance.
How did your appointment go?
It was good. It was good. Everything was normal.
I don't plan to be a bodybuilder. I just want to be healthy. I just want to be able to enjoy life.
His family throws Francis what they hope is a goodbye party for his obese body.
You know, and I'm not hungry. I'm good.
With only 4 days left before his surgery, Francis will have to begin a clear liquid diet so that his digestive tract will be completely empty at the time of the operation.
This is my last meal where I can just eat as much as I want and enjoy. I mean, this is pretty much a spread that we have every time we have a family gathering. And even though we're still gonna have it, I'm not gonna be able to enjoy it as much as I used to because I'm gonna be limited in the quantity I'm allowed to eat.
Eating is a pleasure for Francis, and he doesn't think he has much control over his appetite.
This is great stuff.
You know, maybe I do have a little bit of a problem with self-control. I mean, maybe the hunger just gets the better of me a little bit.
Everybody has to act like it's their last night of food, too. It's not just me.
The quantities they eat may differ, but the process of eating is the same for Francis and his relatives. The mouth first breaks down food by chewing it and mixing it with saliva. Swallowing then forces food down the esophagus, a long muscular tube that moves food to the stomach. The stomachs of people like Francis's average-sized relatives can hold about 3 pints from a meal. But a 500-pound man like Francis has a stomach about twice this size. This is caused by constant overfilling, and his belly holds a whopping 3/4 of a gallon. Once in the stomach, the food is churned like in a cement mixer, breaking it down into smaller pieces. From there, the mixture is pushed into the small intestine. It's in the small intestine that food is mixed with bile from the liver and gallbladder and with pancreatic juices so that nutrients the body needs can be absorbed. Finally, the now liquid waste is forced into the large intestine, or colon, where excess water is reabsorbed and where the material is stored until eliminated. In a lean person, the entire digestive process can take from 24 to 72 hours. But in an obese person, metabolism is much slower, and digestion can take much longer.
Yummy in my tummy.
A slow-moving digestive train means that undigested food can build up so massively in the gut that it effectively rots and can turn toxic. This can result in inflammation, pain, and a host of digestive problems. This is an MRI from an average-sized woman. This MRI is from an obese woman. As much as 30 pounds of undigested food can be seen stored within the folds of her intestinal tract. In fact, obesity changes the body in so many ways that most people would think it's to be avoided at all costs. But this is not always the case. Some people have made a science out of gaining weight to become obese, but with surprisingly different results. 28-year-old Francis Serrano tips the scales at over 500 pounds. He's what scientists call morbidly obese, a dangerous condition that strains vital organs and can lead to many serious health problems, including diabetes. Francis knows he's living on borrowed time, and now he's ready to take a big step. He plans to overhaul his entire digestive system with gastric bypass surgery. With just 4 days to go until his operation, Francis must clear out his small intestine so doctors can easily operate on it. He will begin a clear liquid diet this morning.
So this is the first day of my new lifestyle or new diet, which is consisted of 1 part water, and that's pretty much it. That's all I'm pretty much allowed to eat before the surgery, and even after the first few weeks of the surgery. I'm on a clear liquid diet.
Yummy. Here's to you. Well, I don't like being opened up. Surgery scares me a little bit because it is changing who I am, and it's almost admitting defeat, you know? But then I came to a realization that it wasn't admitting defeat. It's just a new way of fighting it.
And yet there are some people who, unlike Francis, don't try to fight weight gain at all. They embrace it. Sumo wrestlers, known as rikishi, train to put on weight, and some can become quite awesome in size. The heaviest rikishi can reach 500 pounds or more, though most top out at around 350 pounds. Biamba and Baina are two champion sumo wrestlers from Japan and Mongolia. From these willfully massive people, we can gain valuable insight into obesity.
As you can see here, there's Biamba, who's the current world champion, and Baina, who's also trained for many years in Japan. He represented Mongolia at the World Championships before, so he's incredibly good. But, you know, Biamba's the current world champion, so he's just unbelievable. I mean, he's a little over 300 pounds, Biamba, the world champion. He beat guys in the world who are 400, 500. He'll take them all down like that. You can see just his flexibility and his speed and his strength.
By American medical standards, Biamba and Baina each have a body mass index right about 40, which is where the category of morbidly obese begins. Since there's only one weight class in sumo, they try to put on as much bulk as possible during training, yet their bodies are significantly different than those of other obese people. Unlike sumo wrestlers, most men tend to accumulate central body fat, also known as visceral fat. It is stored around the torso, on the back and belly, and within the abdomen. But sumo wrestlers are clearly not like other obese people. One key difference is the way fat is distributed within their bodies. Sumo wrestlers develop what is called subcutaneous fat and not visceral fat. Their fat is stored just beneath their skin. It is easily used up by the body in exercise and does not invade and weaken their muscles. Subcutaneous fat pads the skeleton and muscles and bulks up the body quickly, which is exactly what sumo wrestlers want. But average people are not gaining weight with subcutaneous fat. They're bulking up with visceral fat, which builds up inside the body, invading interior muscles and organs. They also fatten up more slowly than sumos, and they don't work out nearly as much. So for average people, their fat storage does weaken their muscles. A special training regimen allows sumo wrestlers to put on the kinds of fat they want and avoid the kinds they don't.
When these guys enter pro sumo, they do the same regimen every day. The training consists of waking up, usually pre-dawn, let's say 4 or 5 a.m., training the entire morning on an empty stomach, so training 5 or 6 hours straight. And you see them doing the stomp. They do that maybe a couple hundred times in a row. The principle is that training all morning on an empty stomach, you build up an enormous appetite, and they're going to eat much more than they normally would. That metabolic pattern increases the amount of weight they put on in terms, well, actually both of fat and muscle, but it helps them put on a higher amount of weight more quickly. They eat 2 enormous meals, which tends to increase the size of their bellies, not necessarily with fat, but it increases the amount of food they can intake at one time.
Their intake can be enormous, up to 20,000 calories a day, or about 10 times more calories than the average person consumes. This could produce almost 5 pounds of fat.
That's his third miso soup.
Fourth.
And this is just the beginning.
The way sumos and average people use fat may differ, but the process for absorbing food nutrients is the same. Food is composed of 3 basic ingredients: proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. Proteins are quickly carved up by enzymes into amino acids and absorbed directly by the body's cells to be used as building blocks for muscles and bones. Because fats are not water-soluble, the body's cells cannot directly absorb them, and so they take a much longer time to be broken down. Instead, it's the easily absorbed carbohydrates, mostly from starches like rice and pasta, that sumos crave to help pack on the pounds. But the wrestlers' rapid weight gain is not only about what they eat, it's also about how and when they eat. Eating right before going to sleep is a sure way to gain weight quickly. When the body is not using energy, it's storing it in the form of fat. Whether at rest or awake, carbohydrates are converted by enzymes into glucose, or blood sugar, which flows freely in the bloodstream so that it is instantly accessible to muscle cells to burn as fuel. When people are resting, their muscles don't need this energy boost, and these sugars are taken up by fat cells. What drives people's weight gain is hunger, and hormones are the chemical messengers controlling the appetite for food. Hormones tell us when to eat and when to quit eating. One of the most powerful hunger-stimulating hormones is called ghrelin, which is made by specialized cells in the lining of the stomach and the upper part of the small intestine. Ghrelin levels in the blood trigger hunger. Levels then fall after eating. Ghrelin's counterpart in appetite control is called leptin, a protein hormone that signals the brain when the body is full. This recently discovered hormone was originally found not in humans, but in mice. Scientists found that 2 separate strains of mutant laboratory mice, dubbed the OB-OB and the DB-DB mice, were gaining huge amounts of weight for mysterious reasons.
They will not stop eating. They will constantly eat whenever they can. For a long while, neither of these mice, anybody knew why they were grossly obese or became diabetic and had other complications until the discovery in the 1990s of leptin.
Researchers found that leptin is actually made by fat cells that release it into the circulatory system for transport to the brain. Receptors in the brain bind with leptin, which then signals the body that it has had enough to eat by creating the sensation of fullness and content. It is perhaps the most important mechanism used by the body to regulate appetite and food intake.
Mice and the mouse models generally allow us in obesity research to look at the genetics behind obesity, the role of various hormones in production of obesity. There is a series of hormones. You can be fat for different reasons, and the mouse models allow us to actually determine what the mechanism is behind many of these different genetic traits that cause obesity. It turned out that the OB-OB mouse lacked the hormone leptin, while the DB-DB mouse lacked the receptor to the hormone leptin. So both of these had similar but slightly different forms of obesity.
The discovery of leptin underscores the key role that genetics plays in human obesity, and scientists like Dr. Collins are continuing to build links between genes and weight gain. But genetics and runaway appetite aren't the only causes of obesity. Sometimes your own body can turn against you in ways you never thought possible. Francis Serrano reached more than 500 pounds after a lifetime of overeating and a lack of exercise. Now he plans to attack his obesity with a radical overhaul of his body's plumbing. Sometimes obesity can come from totally different sources. It can result from minor changes in the body's chemistry that alter the way we desire and process food. Our bodies are designed to maintain a delicate balance between dozens of different hormones that regulate metabolism. But genetics and other factors can play havoc with the way these hormones function. For Francis, old family photos make plain his obesity is definitely not genetic.
Fortunately enough, I am the only one. There is no history of obesity, even for both my mother and my father's side. So it is just me.
Francis ballooned from simple overeating. But obesity can occur regardless of how much we eat or work out. Endocrinologist Dr. Theodore Friedman has seen this many times before.
You could have somebody that's been going along at a weight of 130 pounds all their life, and they exercise and they diet sort of normally, and all of a sudden their weight shoots up without having any changes in their diet or exercises.
That's exactly what happened to Kate Myers. Kate is a 39-year-old attorney from Millville, New Jersey, who has struggled with obesity since its sudden onset at age 23. For over 15 years, Kate has searched for answers. Today, Kate has come to see Dr. Friedman. He believes her sudden weight gain may be the result of a naturally occurring steroid hormone called cortisol, which can cause a condition known as Cushing syndrome. Normally, the body produces cortisol to regulate blood pressure and to give us the tools to handle stress by creating a quick fight-or-flight response in case of danger. This vital hormone is produced naturally in times of high tension. The brain sends a kind of stress alert to the pituitary gland. This causes the gland to secrete a hormone that stimulates the adrenal glands, which are located on top of the kidneys. The adrenals then release cortisol into the bloodstream, launching the fight or flight response. If something interrupts this delicate system, cortisol can be overproduced, causing a bizarre reshaping of the body. The excess cortisol spurs the body to shift energy in the form of fat to the center of the body and head, and away from the limbs, since these are the most vital areas to protect.
When I was in college, I used to be an avid runner. I ran 5 miles a day, several times a week, and led a pretty active lifestyle. I weighed 140 pounds, and I was a size 8, and I was cute.
Over 16 years, Kate swelled to 340 pounds, overtaxing her heart, lungs, and skeleton. She consulted a series of doctors who misdiagnosed her with simple overeating. Her search for answers eventually led her to Dr. Friedman, who immediately suspected she might have the rare hormonal condition, Cushing syndrome. By flooding the body with the stress hormone cortisol, Cushing syndrome causes not only a bulging torso, but it also gives the face a rounded, moon-like appearance, and fat fills in around the cheeks and neck. Fat also appears in a large lump at the top of the spine. This is referred to as a buffalo hump.
I carefully asked her about her history in terms of diet and exercise, and it turned out that her diet is very balanced. She eats about 1,300 calories a day. She's been to a dietitian. She's very knowledgeable. So I thought with that unexplained rapid weight gain without any change in her diet and her exercise, maybe suspicious of Cushing syndrome. As you get increasing cortisol,
But what causes the body to create so much cortisol? By far, the most common natural cause of Cushing syndrome is the appearance of small benign tumors on the pituitary gland. These pituitary tumors can trigger runaway cortisol production.
Just means a lot of more testing, right?
Testing, yes.
Okay.
The pituitary is a pea-sized gland that lies just behind the nasal cavity below the brain's frontal lobe. It does many jobs in the body, including controlling the actions of other glands by releasing a variety of different hormones. Tumors as tiny as a pencil point growing in the pituitary can secrete increased amounts of the hormone ACTH, which kicks cortisol production into high gear and launches the fight or flight reaction.
It stresses your body quite considerably.
Doctors took a full set of MRIs of Kate's brain.
Area of concern is right over in here.
Trying to locate any tumors on her pituitary that could be causing the problem.
It's suggestive of a tumor there, or we think it is, but we're not 100% sure.
Kate endured 3 more months of rigorous testing to prove the 2 tiny tumors Dr. Friedman had found were the cause of her condition. Kate had surgery that successfully removed the tumors and finally ended her 16-year-long battle with Cushing's. But even surgery is no guarantee of a cure for her.
I try to be honest with the patients and say that we expect the best. We expect them to sort of return to normal within a year. And I would say in about 2/3 of my patients that happens.
Finally, after so many years, I'm really hopeful that I'll be able to get my life back, particularly my health.
It's a feeling shared by Francis Serrano on the night before his gastric bypass.
Tomorrow is a whole new day and a whole new me.
After 3 days on a liquid diet, his body, used to feeding his every craving, is struggling with hunger.
Tired, exhausted, hungry, dizzy, and this pounding headache. Honestly, I just want to get this over with already. I'm ready to start my new life. I'm ready.
With his surgery, Francis knows the risks, and the stakes are sky high. Humans are incredibly efficient eating machines, but sometimes internal mechanisms can go wrong, and hormones can get out of balance, resulting in obesity. Kate Myers spent more than 15 agonizing years learning this lesson the very hard way. But in most cases, obesity is caused by simple overeating, a condition that has pushed Francis Serrano to the operating room. The day of Francis's gastric bypass surgery has arrived.
Jesus. I'm 80% anxious, 20% nervous, of course. But I mean, I've done the research. I've asked the questions. I've prayed. You know, I've prayed intensively, and this is the answer. I know that for a fact now.
Bariatric surgery began in the 1950s, when surgeons doing stomach reductions for severe ulcers and stomach cancer noticed that their patients lost a lot of weight after surgery.
Hi, sir.
Hi. Yes, sir.
Are your name?
Francis
You're gonna
Serrano.
call Francis Serrano.
Over the years, surgical methods have evolved to the point where most bariatric procedures are done with minimally invasive techniques that maximize weight loss while minimizing recovery time.
Jane, what's your patient, Serrano? Nurses here, I'll be taking care of you. Oh, you have paperwork for me? Wonderful. Hi, are you here with them? Great, I'll be coming out and talking with you soon, okay?
Thank you.
Let me just check a couple things first of all. Let me see, do you have an art hand on? And when did you last have something to eat or drink?
Monday.
How about drinking?
Drinking.
Drinking, what time?
7:45 last night.
Okay, very good.
Hey Francis, how are you? Good. So Francis, you took your 3-day liquid diet?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and you...
It's gonna be laparoscopic surgery instead of the open surgery. I should be out of the hospital in 3 days, as compared to a week to 2 weeks with the open surgery.
Okay, do you have any questions?
No.
Okay.
Every surgery has its risks. Although nearly 150,000 gastric bypass operations are performed every year in this country, the mortality rate is relatively high. 1 in every 100 bariatric surgery patients will die because of complications.
Okay, you ready? Okay.
There's no surgery that's completely safe. I've always known that. But here's the way I looked at it. If I don't get surgery, I am gonna die.
Gastric bypass is the most common operation performed in U.S. for weight loss. I think right now we have it down to an art form. Our complication rates are very low. The outcomes are excellent. And I think it's here to stay.
Francis is sedated.
Okay.
The doctors and nurses prep him for the operation. Doctors insert 5 valves into small holes in Francis's belly.
What's the pressure on? There it is.
These valves penetrate the abdominal cavity and are the access points for the surgical tools and the surgeon's camera.
Okay, looks good.
A high-powered tiny video camera and fiber optic light nestled in a long tube become the surgeon's eyes inside the patient.
Lift up the left lobe of the liver. Show you right now, right there. That's the left lobe.
They cut the stomach and surgically staple it at the same time. This creates a small pouch out of the upper portion of the stomach, 1/100th its normal capacity. The doctors then sever the second section of the small intestine called the jejunum. They bring the lower end of the small intestine up and attach it to the smaller stomach pouch. The abandoned section of the stomach and small intestine are then attached further down the jejunum so they can drain necessary stomach fluids back into the working intestinal tract. This re-engineering of the digestive system will drastically reduce the amount of calories Francis can take in at any one time. But it's not always a permanent solution. If Francis does not change his eating habits, his small stomach can over time become stretched out again, allowing him to take in more and more food. The stomach could go from 1/100th to as much as 1/2 its original size. As many as 20% of patients gain back some of the weight they lose.
Better. It went very smooth. So right now we're going to go ahead and close the incisions that we made, and we're done with the operation.
Immediately after the surgery, Dr. Paya goes to talk with Francis's mom to tell her how it went.
Hi, Ro. How are you? He's great. So the operation was very good, according to plan, no complications, and he did great. I'm very happy with it. Thank you. Okay? All right. Thank you. He's going to be just fine, and he's going to lose a lot of weight.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Good afternoon, everybody. There's something that I'd like to share with you guys today. I underwent gastric bypass surgery.
4 weeks later, Francis has fully recovered from his surgery and is experiencing life in his much trimmer body.
I wanted to continue to enjoy life. I wanted to continue to spend my time with my friends and my family. And I just don't want to cut myself short.
He's doing really well right now. The first 2 weeks after surgery, he lost approximately 75 pounds. And he was getting around a lot easier, less pain on his knees and his hips.
I'm not obsessed about the number. I'm more obsessed about how I feel about it, you know, and I'm feeling stronger, I'm feeling better, I'm losing the weight.
Dr. Paya believes that based on his experience with other gastric bypass patients, Francis will lose about 75% of his excess weight in 1 year's time. He'll lose the rest between 18 and 24 months from now. This weight drop should greatly ease the stress on his heart, lungs, and his entire body architecture. Although re-engineering the body through bariatric surgery may seem like an easy solution, it's not. It can be risky and expensive.
Right there, anteriorly. Yeah, you're right there.
Some doctors hope to do away with surgeries like gastric bypass altogether, using medication to manipulate the signals that flow between the gut and the brain, telling the body to overeat. Francis has no regrets about his decision.
It's not cosmetic surgery. It's something that I had to do to save my life.
Francis and Kate know the road ahead will be long and challenging, but they're hopeful. The human body is an extraordinary machine with amazing systems designed to keep it in balance. Our body's weight impacts every one of those systems. And those whose weight taxes the body to extremes must take extreme steps to stay alive.
Here's to you.